looks like we got a question here from MM who says, I dropped coffee, which is great. Dairy was stalling my weight loss. I'm now 1 kilo of beef mince per day and drink ice water. Do I need to add eggs or something, or am I getting sufficient nutrition from only beef? Yeah, no, you're definitely getting everything you need from beef as long as you're getting enough fat. The fat and the lean are really important. Beef mince can be quite lean. And so just make sure that you're getting enough fat. Some people say, oh, it's 80-20. That's really fatty. It's very fatty for today's standards. But traditional ground beef was like 73-27 or 70-30 sort of thing. And that's a better ratio of fat to protein. So see how much that is. Probably need to add a bit more fat, even grass-fed butter, something like that. Grass-fed tallow is even better. Best would be fat trimmings from your butcher, which would be sometimes they're quite cheap or even free. Sometimes they give those away to people. So because otherwise they throw it away. Actually, they have to pay to get it taken away. So sometimes they're more than happy to just let you have it. So ask your butcher and see what you can do. But many of them will sell it for quite a low price, and then you can chop it up into little squares, fry it up on the pan, and put a little pile of fat next to your meat, and that can work very well. But yeah, you get absolutely everything that you need just from fatty meat. You don't need to add eggs, but you can if you like, if you enjoy them and they don't react badly with you. Let's see. Let's take a look. There's a question from Bunmi Ahmed, who says, hi, I've had essential blood pressure problems and been on meds for 17 years, on strict carnivore for 13 days now. Do you think this way of eating will help after so many years of medication? Yeah, it definitely can. It obviously depends on what's causing your hypertension, but there are a number of causes, very reversible causes of hypertension that really don't get taught or publicized in medical school because they don't take medications or procedures to treat. It's when you look at carbohydrates raise insulin, and insulin has hundreds of physiological effects in your body. First and foremost, it is a growth hormone. So it's an anabolic steroid. It causes tissues to grow. But generally not the tissues you want to grow. So first and foremost, it causes your fat to grow. It causes your rectal polyps to grow. It causes your skin tags to grow. It causes men's prostates to grow. It causes women's fibroids, uterine fibroids to grow. And it also causes the muscular layer of your arteries to grow and thicken and get and so they're not as compliant, and they won't be able to release and actually increase the capacity and volume that they're able to hold, and therefore increase your blood pressure. And so that's a very, very easy way of reversing very reversible cause of high blood pressure is getting rid of the carbohydrates in your diet, going on a ketogenic diet, whether that's a carnivore diet or another form of ketogenic diet. You get your blood sugar down, you get your insulin down, and eventually that muscular layer will go back to normal. It won't be hypertrophy, and that can definitely reduce your blood pressure as well. Another thing is homocysteine, which is an amino acid that is metabolized by B12 that causes irritation to the inside of your arteries. It actually can cause damage that can lead to atherosclerosis and plaque. And that can also cause your arteries to constrict, causing high blood pressure. Homocysteine will only be high if you have inadequate levels of B12, for instance. So if you're eating a lot more meat and you're ketogenic, that's going to hit two major causes for essential hypertension. And a lot of people are finding that they can severely reduce their blood pressure requirements or even come off their blood pressure medications entirely. So so it could very well be that you can come off your blood pressure medication, but it's something you have to sort of see if that is indeed what's going on. There are actually a few people that are also salt sensitive. It's actually more rare than people think, but it can still happen. I have seen that where people have been ketogenic carnivore for a number of years and they're still having weird labile high blood pressure, and then they cut out salt and just goes bang to normal within a couple of days. So that's something to think about as well. And because you're on medication, you need to be careful and you need to work with your doctor, because you may not need as much blood pressure medication in the coming weeks or months once these things start normalizing. And so you can get dizzy or lightheaded, especially when standing up out of a sitting position. And that can be dangerous because you can fall. So you can get your blood pressure can go too low if you're on medication and you don't need the medication anymore. So then your blood pressure may go too low, and that can be dangerous and a falls risk. So, work with your doctor. And if you have any of those dizzy, lightheaded episodes, check your blood pressure. If your blood pressure is showing lower levels, you need to work with your doctor to start reducing your blood pressure medication, which is a good thing. And we have a Happy New Year's from Coach Joff. Thank you very much, Coach. Happy New Year's to you as well. Let's see. What sort of questions do we have here? Here we go. Let's do this one. Benelin Borisov, who says, I got tons of eye floaters, like a lot, and visual snow syndrome 1 month ago. Got them checked, and the doctors, 3 of them, said, you're fine, get used to them. Ugh. They ruined my life. Will carnivore and keto help? It's hard to say. Again, it really just depends on what's causing these things. So, I do know people that have improved floaters. It's you gotta have to take these things on a case by case basis, though, because it depends on what's causing them and what's causing the floaters, and is that something that's reversible? It seems to be for some people, but I'm not an ophthalmologist, so I don't see a lot of these things. That's not what people come to see me for in my practice. And so, I do see a lot of, I've seen people actually improve their prescription on their glasses and sometimes not even need glasses anymore, which is quite surprising. That wasn't something I was expecting to see, that people could reverse, astigmatisms as an adult. I mean, that was not something that I was expecting to see, but some people do, not everybody. So I'm still trying to figure out who seems to benefit the most from this from a vision standpoint, but some people are, which is pretty amazing. So from a floater's point of view, it could very well be that this could help, but it's one of those ones you're just going to have to try and see. Some people absolutely do improve. And I only see the positive results, though, when people saying, yeah, this helped my floaters. They're just sort of talking about that. There may be, for every one person that's fixed their floaters, there may be 10 that it didn't fix their floaters. And I just don't have that information, unfortunately. So I think it's just something that's worth trying, certainly. A, because it could help. It has helped others, but B, because it just helps in so many other ways as well. You're going to get improvements. You're going to improve your health in a number of different ways, and it's going to keep you healthy for longer as well. So that's something that I think is well worth trying anyway. And if it helps your floaters, then, even better. And and unfortunately, the doctors that you saw, and you've seen 3 of them, they don't have any solutions for you. So you might as well try. Nothing else seems to be on the possible to help. So might as well give it a try. So good luck with that. And if it helps you, please report back and let us know, because that'd be good information, and somebody else who's in the same situation would be nice for them to know about. Or even if it doesn't help, that's good information too. We need to know the positives and the negatives. So good luck with that, and I hope it goes well. Okay, we've got a couple super chats, so I'm gonna pop these up. First is from Bussy Boy. Thanks very much for the super chat. Good evening, Dr. Anthony. I used to be on Ritalin and Seroquel, and I was so tired. Changed my diet to meat, eggs, and wild caught cod and perch, and read a book for sleep and stopped meds. I've never felt so good. Well, that's amazing. I'm really glad to hear that. And it doesn't look like there's a question attached, and just a sort of a great result. So really glad to hear that. I'm glad you do it so well. And thanks for sharing that. I hope that is encouraging to others and helps them get on it as well. Nav, thank you so much for the super chat. Nav says, I asked a question on Patreon last night. I have IBS, strict carnivore for 7+ months, tried fermented dairy, tried switching foods too, but zero relief. Asked about betaine, HCl, and biosupplements. Not sure what else to try at this point. Please advise. Yeah, I actually did answer that question. That should be on the Patreon group homepage. So I uploaded that. Let me just double check and make sure that's uploaded. Yep, that's uploaded. So that should be on there. And so I went through a lot of different things that you can try. Basically, it comes down to trial and error. You're just trying different things, trying different foods that may react. You even try fasting for a couple of days and see, then start adding things back in one at a time and see what causes a problem and what doesn't, and stick to the ones that are, give you the better result, and try to avoid the things that give you a bad result. And if you're fasting for a couple of days and you're still getting these weird issues, it may not actually be the food, it may be something else going on. So you can try that, try the trial and error, have a food journal and a diary, and, fast for a day or two and cut back in, water fast, drink water, but don't eat anything for a day or two. See how that affects you. Add one thing back at a time. Start with beef or lamb, something like that, something easy. See how that affects you. Try something else, etc. You can try the HCl. You can try biosupplements, although it's it's may or may not help, but you can try it, and just see what happens. But I think it's well worth the trial and error. The fermented dairy, if it's a microbiome issue, having dairy, you need to, having fermented anything, if you're just eating it straight, it's going to get burned up in your stomach acid. It's not going to go past that and get to your large intestine. But if you put that on meat and chew that up and swallow it together, the thought is that sort of gets these little bacteria down deep inside the bolus of food, and sort of like a Trojan horse gets it by the defense of your stomach acid, and then can get some of those bacteria down to your colon, things like that. So hopefully that can help. If it is the case that you have a microbiome issue and you need to replenish the microbes in there with fermented dairy, etc., then just remember that once you've reestablished your microbiome, it should be able to keep perpetuating itself, because they're living organisms, without having to take more fermented dairy. So it may not be a microbiome issue. You can always check your microbiome, and if it's just completely sacked because you've been on long-term antibiotics recently, then that might be something to look at. But that's something you can test at least, and then other things you can look around at with trial and error. So hopefully that helps. And I have a sort of a longer, more in-depth answer on the Patreon. If people are interested in the Patreon, it's just I have a Patreon group and a community that's quite active and helpful on in Patreon and in Discord. Everybody talks to each other, helps each other out. There's a lot of very experienced people there. We do weekly Q&As, actually twice weekly sessions. One's a Q&A and one's sort of more of a hangout thing where everyone just sort of talks and chats about whatever's going on. And so that's available. And then you can watch the replays and things like that as well. So so Nav, do go back and so I hope that helps, but also check out the longer answer on Patreon. So question from Ben Cox. Thank you, Ben, for the super chats. Very nice of you. Ben says, I've been doing carnivore for 1 year, and my I'm always bad with that word. hidradenitis, for my hidradenitis, Jesus. And every time I try adding dairy, though, I get headaches and a sore throat. Any ideas? Avoid dairy. That's probably what I would do. Anytime you have a negative reaction to something like that, I would just probably avoid it, especially if there's another alternative that doesn't cause that sort of problem. Dairy is something that some people just react to. Actually, a lot of people react to negatively. And so while dairy has a lot of excellent nutrients in it that are very good for you, they're not giving you any nutrients that you're not going to get from fatty meat. It's not like you're missing something essential that you absolutely have to have it, and you'll be in trouble otherwise. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just cut that out. And with a lot of these different sorts of reactions that people have, it's best to just go very clean, red meat and water and high fat. And that's usually how people do the best with these sorts of things. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. So the next question is from Electron Babies. Thank you very much for the super chat. I just wanted to say that I've been following you for years and you've been absolutely inspirational. Just wanted to say I love what you do. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I'm really glad that's helpful, or that my videos have been helpful. Yeah, it means a lot to hear that. And I appreciate you saying that. You get a lot of people saying a lot of weird things, against me, and, saying I'm horrible in a lot of different ways. And so it's, but it's always, it's the positive comments far outweigh, the negative detractors, and the negative people are never people that have tried it, never people that actually paid attention to what I'm saying. They're just, they're just trash talkers and children. So, or, children parading as adults, but, it's never actually people that have, sat down and paid attention and actually given things a fair shake or tried it themselves. So, it's always great to hear people are doing well. And, that's why we're here, it's to help people. So thanks for that. Let me take a look as well. See some stuff on Instagram. Okay, so here's one from Instagram. That's from Mrs. Zara, who says, "Hi, Anthony. My son is 4 and is animal-based. My daughter is almost 2 and carnivore. What age would you introduce fruits if you had a toddler?" For me personally, I would probably sort of keep it as it is. I mean, I think it's really great that they're eating so much meat and even full carnivore, especially when they're developing. It depends. I guess it depends on the fruit. I mean, all fruit are going to have toxins, unfortunately. Avocados and grapes are thought to be very healthy, but they will kill cats and dogs. So there are toxins in there, right? And so that's not necessarily, something that's, it's not going to be, just wholly benign, even though, it is presumably something the plant wants you to eat. It wants something to eat the fruit. It doesn't necessarily want us to eat the fruit. Most fruit on earth will kill you. You go out in the woods and you see random bulbs and berries and things like that. You do not eat them. It's not safe to just eat random fruits or berries because they could very well be deadly, poisonous, or just harmful in some other way. So, that's something to think about. They do have toxins. Even the ones that are more edible do have some toxins, so that can build up. They'll have a lot more toxins when they are picked green. They actually won't detoxify because when it's green, the seed's not ready, and that's the whole point of a fruit is the seed, and because that's the plant's baby, that's the next generation, and And so, and so when it's green, there are far more toxins in there. And if it's picked green, they don't detoxify. It's the plant that actually has to pull out those toxins. They don't, if it ripens in the box, those toxins don't just, go away. So it's really important to understand that. So if you're going to eat fruit or you're going to give fruit to your kids, make sure that fruit is ripened on the tree, vine ripened, and so forth. That's really important. And the other thing is that sweet fruits are way more sweet than they really ever should be. They've been bred to be as sweet as possible, like all the fruits and things like that we're eating. All the plants in general that we eat, there's not natural plants that we ever would have eaten in the wild. We've cultivated them to be very different, and the sweet fruits are far sweeter than they should be, so they have a lot of sugar in them. For kids especially, you really want to be in ketosis. You want them to be in ketosis because their brains require ketones to grow properly. Ketones are your brain's primary fuel source. Why do I say that whenever it's, you need glucose for your brain? Well, you need glucose for some parts of your brain. That's true. But 2/3 of your brain actually primarily and preferentially run on ketones, because if you have abundant amount of ketones and you have a sufficient amount of glucose, 2/3 of your brain will only run on those ketones. Even though there's enough glucose available, it will just push those to the side and only take in the ketones. So that's a preference. So that's the primary energy source. It's only when those ketones go down that you start filling in the gaps with glucose. So, and the rest of the remaining amount of parts of your tissues that still will use glucose, perfectly adequate amounts of glucose that you just make yourself. You don't actually need them from outside sources. And when you take in outside sources of glucose, it suppresses your body's ability to make ketones. And you actually overwhelm your system with the amount of glucose and blood sugar and things like that. So that's not good either. The other thing is that ketones cross the blood-brain barrier and reconstitute into fatty acids, which are then used as the physical building blocks and matrix of the brain and nervous system. So it's actually really important to be in ketosis as a kid, especially when you're developing your brain and nervous system. It's really, really important. And so, you're still physically growing your brain until like 25. Actually, probably maybe even slightly more than that. And you're always growing and remodeling your brain and growing new synapses and things like that. Hopefully you should be throughout your entire life, or if you're not, you're actually losing them and your brain's actually deteriorating, which is not good. So, at least going through puberty, honestly. And, carbohydrates will raise insulin. Insulin will disrupt your hormones. It will stunt testosterone. It will stunt growth hormone, and it will, block the effects of growth hormone. Insulin can stimulate growth hormone in a way, but it also blocks the action of growth hormone. So, you can sort of screw yourself there as well. And it definitely will block the production of estrogen. And so for brain development, it's very important to be in ketosis. And for puberty and hormonal development, it's really important to be in ketosis as well. So I don't know, 25 is probably a good time to start thinking about fruit, sweet fruits anyway, and just always be vine ripened, tree ripened sort of things. I would really avoid any other kinds. Okay, let's see here. Next one on the list is AnyDesk. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Chaffee. On a lion diet and have seen no improvement on my alopecia totalis. It's actually gotten worse and turned into universalis. What should I do? I'm 4 months into the diet and losing all hope. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, there can be other causes of alopecia and all the different sorts of issues that we deal with. Carnivore can address a lot of them, but not necessarily all of them. A lot of chronic issues and autoimmune issues absolutely can be vastly improved by going on a carnivore diet, especially a lion diet. Do make sure you're getting enough meat. You should make sure you're getting enough fat in particular, and cut out everything else, even coffee and artificial sweeteners especially. Those are pretty nasty stuff. And then you want to check out other things as well. If there's other sorts of reasons you're losing your hair. I mean, one is can also be from things like low thyroid or low nutrients in other respects. And so if you have a malabsorption issue, even though you're eating extremely healthily and a high nutrient diet and high nutrient density food, if you're not able to absorb these things, if you have some sort of malabsorption issue, then you're not going to get in the food that you're not going to get into nutrients that you need. So, do think about that. Check your B12, check your vitamin D, zinc, magnesium. Red blood cell levels of zinc and magnesium are important to check. The serum levels are not very accurate. They're just really, they don't tell you what's going on inside the cell, and inside the cell is what matters. And you want to be on the high end of normal, if not above the normal reference range for these vitamins and minerals, because the normal reference range is just the average for the community. It's not telling you what's optimal. And that's why every single lab in every single town and every single country have different reference ranges. So the same labs in the same city, or there are different labs in the same city, will have different reference ranges. So that's not helpful, right? If one lab's telling you you're fine, another lab's telling you you're too low, another one's saying you're too high, it's like, well, that's a bit useless, isn't it? And there's usually not that big of a range, but you can have ones that say you're normal and others say that you're too high, for instance, or some that say that you're normal and some say that you're too low. You want to look at what's optimal, and optimal is a very different bar. And so I would check those things. I would check your thyroid. I would check your iodine. I would check your B12, D3, zinc, magnesium, these other sorts of things. Make sure you're getting, you're absorbing all these nutrients. If you're drinking coffee, if you're having anything besides meat and water, cut it out. Just get rid of it and see how you go. And at the end of the day, it could be that something else is triggering your alopecia, and unfortunately, even fixing your diet and being very healthy otherwise, may not be enough. But you do check those things too, because those can be a bit off. And if you're not absorbing things, maybe it just comes down to you need a bit of liver in your life, 2 to 3 ounces of liver 2 to 3 days a week. That sorts out a lot of people who aren't quite absorbing as much as they need. Okay, so you need to just see if you're one of these people. I don't seem to be. I don't eat organs, and all my vitamins and minerals are just in an optimal level, and so that's good. But not everybody's like that. I check like thousands of people's blood work at this point, and everyone will be in the reference range. Everyone will be in the reference range or above the normal reference range. But I look at optimal ranges. So okay, I want people to be perfect, and so I use different reference ranges. And most people on a carnivore diet will be perfect or very close to perfect. Some people just need a bit more help. Maybe people are on medications like a metformin that blocks out B12. Sometimes people are taking coffee that will block out and strip out magnesium and zinc, and it will stop you from absorbing a lot of other nutrients if you have coffee with your meal, for instance. Or if you take your medications in and around the time you take coffee, you will just not absorb those medications properly. And you can measure this. I've seen many people on thyroid medication having coffee within an hour of having their thyroid hormone. They just don't absorb it much at all. And so, that's just something you need to be aware of, that these sorts of things can affect it. And so I would just check those things. And if everything's fine and perfect, you just, start looking around for other things that might be impeding your progress with this. But it could be, something unrelated to your diet anyway. And maybe that unrelated thing is reversible, and maybe it's not, but hopefully it is. Good luck. Tom J, thank you for the super chat. Tom says, do any of your Hashimoto's patients require iodine to lower antibodies? Line diet for 3 months and antibodies are still high. TPO is over 1,000 and TG is over 500. So not necessarily, lower they don't necessarily need iodine to lower their antibodies. They may need iodine if they're deficient, and that just comes from the soil. If it's not in the soil, it's not going to get in the grass. It's not going to get in the meat. If it's not in the soil, it's not going to get in the broccoli. That's just not going to get in the food. So check your iodine, and if you are deficient, then eating richer iodine foods. I mean, seafood will typically have quite a lot of iodine, just because the ocean is quite replete with iodine. So that's like sort of the ocean soil is just the water, right? So the water is usually quite replete with iodine, and so seafood typically is a good source of iodine. And if you need to supplement with drops, just do that gently, and I don't think that taking iodine is dangerous for most people. There are suggestions in the literature to say that you want to be careful with Hashimoto's and supplementing iodine. For some reason that can exacerbate Hashimoto's. I don't know why that would be. I don't know if that applies to carnivores. May or may not. There's a lot of differences between these groups. People that eat differently. But at the end of the day, you need iodine. But playing devil's advocate and just being safe, playing on the safe side, just might as well just go slowly, check your iodine again, and just use the least amount that you need to get you in an optimal range for iodine. As far as your antibodies are concerned, that shouldn't really be required to lower your antibodies. It can take well over a year or two before you get your antibodies down to nothing. Think about celiac disease. Now, I do a video on YouTube called "The Real Cause of Autoimmune Diseases," and I talk about my theory on what autoimmunity is and how it's not really autoimmune. I don't think that it is. And I look at it, and one of the examples I use is celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, but it's called a gluten-mediated autoimmune disease. And that's because you have to eat gluten in order to have this so-called autoimmune condition. So is that really an autoimmune condition if you need something else to kick it off? I would argue that it's not. And here's why. So gluten is a lectin. That's a plant toxin. It's a protein with a carbohydrate substructure. It can bind to all sorts of different antigens on the surface of your cells. And so it binds and damages your gut cells called your enterocytes, and that can cause leaky gut. That can cause all sorts of different gut permeability problems and issues as well. So whenever your body's being attacked, you mount an immune response to this, right? That's a normal response. And so in this case, you're getting antibodies towards that gluten that is attacking your enterocytes, right? So you get these antibodies. Now they're attacking the gluten that's on your enterocytes, but now there's this gluten enterocyte complex or gluten antigen complex, and those antibodies may be attacking those, but the cells are getting hit in the crossfire. So this is like civilian casualties. So the antibodies aren't attacking your body. They're attacking the gluten that is attacking your body. So it's mounting a defense, right? But because that gluten is stuck to your cells are getting hit in the crossfire, right? And so this damages your villi and your microvilli. It's flattening. You get malabsorption issues. You get all sorts of problems. But then when you remove the gluten, the problem goes away. And your body stops attacking the gluten, and the tissue can heal. And in a number of weeks, even 4 to 6 weeks, you can get a complete revitalization of your enterocytes and your villi and your microvilli, right? Even though the antibodies stay elevated for up to 3 years after your last exposure to gluten. And that's important because those antibodies are not now attacking your body. So that's not an autoimmune disease, is it? Because those antibodies are not attacking your body. They're attacking the gluten. And I think that's what's going on with all autoimmune conditions, including Hashimoto's. And so it can take a while for these things. I mean, gluten is just in your gut and then comes out, and then you stop eating it, it goes away. But these other lectins and other sorts of things, glyphosate, all these other sorts of things, they can get in your body and potentially attack different tissues and organs and things like that, and have your body mount an immune response as a result of that. That can stay in your system for a while. It can take a while for your body to clear that. So you may have ongoing sort of symptoms. And obviously, if you keep ingesting these things, that can keep reintroducing these problem sort of chemicals into your body, which is why like a lion diet, just ruminant meat, like beef and lamb, seems to work best for people with autoimmune conditions, because I think that it's just eliminating out absolutely as much of these potential problems that will attack your body and your body then responds to with antibodies as possible, right? So, but even then, if you get rid of all these things, you may still have these antibodies elevated. But if this theory is true, which, it is theory, then those antibodies shouldn't be doing anything negative to your body, just like in celiac, right? And so but they're waiting there to pounce, right? And so the second you eat something you're not supposed to, and those things hit onto your thyroid, you've got all these antibodies that are just waiting to just blow it up. And so you can have a serious problem. And of course, then the antibodies will go up again because, we have a problem. So, when you get exposed to some sort of pathogen, and you may mount an immune response to them, you keep these antibodies around for a long time. This is the premise behind vaccines, right? And so then you're mounting this immune response, but then you track your titers over time, and you can see that they're actually still elevated for a while, and they might go a bit lower and a bit lower. And so to work in the hospitals, you have to be inoculated to hepatitis B, among other things. And so you have to check your hepatitis B titers and make sure that you have a high enough antibody level that if you get exposed with like a needle prick or get exposed to somebody's blood and they have hepatitis B, which is very contagious, that it's not going to that your antibodies are high enough that you'll be able to just stomp these things down before they get in and start causing damage to your liver, right? And so that can be the same thing with Hashimoto's, right? So, and with celiac, again, 3 years, these things can be elevated, right? So you have very elevated Hashimoto's antibodies. And so it can take years before those things come down, but they do sort of steadily come down, steadily come down, steadily come down. That's sort of what a normal thing that we see with antibodies in general, but it could be that even though these things are elevated, as long as you're eating properly, they hopefully won't be attacking and damaging your thyroid. So long story short, no, I don't think you need iodine in order to lower your antibodies, because I think there's a different mechanism going on. You need iodine for other reasons, though. So make sure you're getting enough iodine, and then just keep track of your antibodies. Be very strict. Red meat and water, because that's the thing with Hashimoto's is, if you have Crohn's disease and you eat something that you shouldn't, you have bloody diarrhea for the next 3 days, and you're hating life. And so you're like, okay, I'm never eating that again. It's very, very, very self-motivating. Hashimoto's, it can take longer than that. You may just feel run down in the next sort of week or two and not even realize it was because you had something outside of plan. Some people with autoimmune issues can't deal with monogastric animals like pigs and chicken and fish. If they're farm raised and they're being fed a bunch of corn, soy, and garbage that they're not designed to eat, they're not going to be able to process those toxins properly, and it's going to get into their meat and their fat, and that can get into you, and you can get these lectins and glyphosates and all these other sorts of things. And whereas the ruminant animals, because of their complex digestive tract and ability to ferment the food first, they take out a lot of those toxins and even glyphosate before you absorb it. I've seen articles talking about how it appears that ruminant animals can actually break down glyphosate, which is really important because that's just everywhere now. And it's in the bloody rainwater in some places now. So, it's something to think about. And so really, really, really want to just stick to just red meat and water. And, I had, I'll give you a timeline here from what I've seen. So I had a lady that had her TPO antibodies were 650 and her TG antibodies were 50. And after 8 months of a strict lion diet, her TPO went from 650 down to 50, and her TG went from 50 to 0, or, non-detectable anyway. So, but that's in 8 months of being perfect, right? If you're not perfect, it's like you're getting exposed to that pathogen again, and that immune response is going to spike up again, right? So if you go and travel somewhere and just say, oh well, I'm just going to let it go for a couple of weeks because I'm on vacation or whatever, you might feel pretty wretched for the next several weeks after that. And you could check your antibodies; they might have spiked up again. So spike up real quick and take a very long time to come down, and then you eat something else, spikes up again. So you have to think about this in that context. Anytime you eat, you're exposing yourself to another pathogen. Your body's going to jack up your immune response. So keep that in mind. Oh goodness. Okay. So sort of the super chat sort of got away from me there. So, oh Christ, I'm gonna have to check something. Just because sometimes it's possible to sort of stop the super chats. At some point, I'm going to need to stop those. Let me see. Come on. What's going on here? So I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to find this thing where I can see where I can sort of pause the super chats and things like that. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So I don't need to do that now, but just in a bit, I might have to pause the super chats just because I don't want to not get to them, but there's actually quite a bit here. So let's see how we do. Okay. So next question is from Nav, who asked, how do I get my microbiome checked? It's a fecal sample. So there's a lot of different things. You don't need a doctor to do this. You just get, there's different companies depending on the country and area that you're in. I don't know all the different ones or what the best ones are, but this is something that can be is eminently Googleable. And so just find a place that does microbiome testing, and they'll send you a kit. Basically, you'll need to provide a stool sample. You put that sample in their little container, and you'll send it off to them, and then they'll run it through the lab and give you your answer and some feedback. Anytime you get any sort of test, just remember this is a snapshot in time. This can change all the time, especially your microbiome. Microbiome can change very, very readily, but it can give you a very good look at what's going on right now, that snapshot in time, and then you can check it again in a few months. And if it's just barren and you don't have a lot of diversity and things are pretty rotten, okay, that's maybe a good time to start thinking about the fermented dairy eaten with and chewed up and swallowed together with meat, and then do that for a few weeks, and you really don't. Once you have established a new microbiome, it should just perpetuate based on the food that you're eating, and you'll support the bacteria that you want with fatty meat. Those are the microbes we want, are the ones that do well on those. So then you check it again and see how you're going, and get some weird changes and things like that you're concerned about. You can check it that way and see how you go. And if it comes back and it's very diverse and healthy and all these different sorts of species that are good for you, then you can at least check that one off the list on possible concerns and issues that might be causing your IBS. So good luck with that. Annabella, the happy carnivore, nice to see you again. Hi, Dr. A. Whenever I eat a lot of fat trimmings, I get a keto whoosh, increased water weight. I wonder why. I've also been able to get off diabetes meds this year. Hey, congratulations. That's really good. That's interesting. I've never heard of keto whoosh. I've heard of keto flu and keto rash and um, I don't know, keto diarrhea. I don't know what else you want to call it. But I haven't heard of keto whoosh before. But that's interesting. That is interesting that you would gain water weight. That's actually not something that I've really seen much before. I wonder if that's the same if you're eating butter or something else, or tallow, or just fatty meat. If you're just eating a fattier cut of meat, do you get that, or is it just specifically the trimmings? Maybe play around with that, and see if it what is doing what, because there might be some subtle differences there. And at the end of the day, if you're getting an unwanted effect, by eating fat trimmings versus something else, just avoid those things, and see how you go. But maybe there's something strange to do with the trimmings themselves as opposed to fat, because that's interesting. It really shouldn't do that. And so maybe play around with that and see if other sources of fat don't do that. And but do tailor things in a way that work best for your body. And again, congratulations on getting off your diabetes medications. That's fantastic. So Nav, thank you so much for the very, very generous super chat. Nav says, when I do strict line diet, hands are dry and crack in winter. But when I do carnivore, adding back in eggs, butter, bacon, and sardines, my hands are less dry. I thought line diet would suffice. Is this an omega-3 deficiency? Yeah, that's interesting. It may be that you're just not getting as much fat. If bacon's not going to necessarily have all the omega-3s you want unless it's sort of pasture raised. Grass-fed butter will have a good amount. Pasture-raised eggs will as well. Certainly, wild-caught sardines are good for the healthy fat side of things. And it could very well be that if you're eating grain-finished beef and lamb, if they're in the feedlot for up to 3 months, they typically don't have much of the omega-3s to speak of. They basically sort of wash all those out at that point. At least some studies have shown that anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, I would be suspicious that, the dry sort of, a lot of times when people get dry skin, it's often that they're not eating enough fat. So maybe they're just not eating enough fat in general, or maybe it's the quality of fat, like you mentioned. So try increasing the fat. And but again, it doesn't have to be line diet unless you have to be on a line diet for your specific health issues, like autoimmune issues and things like that. I always feel best on just red meat and water. That's just it tastes the best to me. I feel best. I don't have any autoimmune issues. I don't have any specific health issues that I have to deal with. I just feel better in general, so I just naturally gravitate there anyway. But yeah, if you find that you're doing better with a bit of other things mixed in, that could be a reason why. And either way, if that's where you feel the best, then do that. Deanna Christine, brain injury. Thank you very much for the super chat. I'm not seeing a question, but possibly there's one down below. I don't know. I don't have anybody helping me here checking things, so I'm not actually sure if I'm going to be able to see that, unfortunately. Let me just try to see if I can sort of look around here. There's something here. Dana says, I have 2 brain injuries and stopped. I have 2 brain injuries and a brain stem injury, brain stem damage. I'm very sorry to hear that. I also have seizures, and I just went off my seizure medications. I went off my muscle relaxer about a month ago. Can I get your thoughts? I suppose I have to do a bit of guesswork here. Have seizures and went off my seizure medication. if that's in the context of on a carnivore diet and you don't need your seizure medications, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. Ketogenic diets in general will improve the outcomes from traumatic brain injury recovery. That's in the clinical literature, and we've known that for years. And so, as I was mentioning before, you really need ketones for your brain for development, but also for regeneration, regrowth, and repair, and just your normal maintenance. You need the ketones to build the physical structures, and the ketones also to power your brain optimally. And it also reduces inflammation and further damage that can happen in cases of injury as well, because ketones directly suppress inflammation. And then you're getting all these other sorts of wonderful things for your brain, like B12, vitamin D, DHA, EPA, arachidonic acid, all these other sorts of things that are very, very, very necessary and beneficial to the brain. So they all really help. And we've been treating epilepsy for a century now with ketogenic diets, animal-based ketogenic diets, high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diets, like a carnivore diet. And so a lot of people are finding that they can improve their epilepsy or those sorts of seizure disorders, and by going on a ketogenic diet. And even some people get even more improvement by going on a ketogenic carnivore diet, because there are other triggers for seizures, like caffeine and coffee. I know people that have to avoid caffeine and coffee because that will trigger their seizures, for example, and that's ketogenic, right? So if you're able to come off those medications because you're doing so much better, then that's great. That's really exciting to hear. It's always nice to see that. Muscle relaxers as well. If this is helping in that way as well, and you're coming off more and more medications, then that's always really great to see. I think that ketogenic carnivore diets are a really, really, really good solution to a lot of people's neurological conditions and recovering from brain injuries as well. And this is something that we're seeing even years down the track of people actually improving their neurological function after a stroke or some sort of injury to the brain, which is wild. That's not supposed to happen, but it is happening. And so hopefully it can continue to happen for you as well. And hopefully you get more and more improvements as you go. So good luck with that. Bunmi Ahmed, thank you for the super chat. She asked, how can I transition my 4-year-old twins to carnivore? They love pasta and rice, etc. That's understandable. And sometimes it takes a bit of tough love to sort of transition kids, because they're just used to these things. They don't know why they can't have them anymore. They enjoy them, and so on. But, you can just talk to them and explain to them, why, that this is, it's not really all that good for you. This stuff is better and all that sort of stuff. But you can also just do it in a very subtle way where, you just don't have as much in the house. Maybe you start, cutting it down, or they say, oh, you want some rice and pasta? Oh, sorry, sweetie. We don't really have that. I'll have to go to the store, but we do have this other nice thing that you like. So the different sorts of meats that they like, eggs that they like, prepare those. And so it's not that they're going from, well, they're not allowed to have pasta, which they love, and they have to eat this other thing, which they really don't like all that much. You're making meat like, liver or something like that. And they're just like, oh no, I'm not doing that. That's going to be a harder sell. But if you are making sure that they're getting foods that they really like, meats, fatty meats and eggs and things like that they really like, then you can say, oh, yeah, we don't have that tonight. Sorry, we're not going to be able to have rice tonight, but we do have this other thing that you really like. And so, that's what we're going to have, and you can slowly transition these things out of the house. And then all of a sudden, they're 4, so, 4-year-olds are not dumb, but, it is something that you can sort of change their environment, and they'll get used to it fairly readily, and they can adapt and actually just be very fine with it. And constantly you're educating them, because they're just sponges for information and knowledge at that age. And so, you can just talk to them about how important this is, for them and their growing and their growth and their brains and all these sorts of things. So it's like, well, the pasta is not really good for you because, we want you to grow strong and want you to be very smart. And so this food is better for that. And, and for all these different reasons, and you can explain in as much detail as you think that they would be able to understand. But that's a way you can do it, and just I mean, 4-year-olds, you think back to when you were 5 or 6, young. We were young, we didn't know much, but we weren't dumb, and they're not either. And so they're, if you explain to them and don't bullshit them, if you just tell them what's going on, and say why it's better to eat these sorts of things, they'll pick that up. And again, you can sort of just slowly filter these things out, so there's just less and less of this junk in the house, and then they're getting used to eating this good food, and then they like it. And so then with the education on top of that, then they understand why they're doing it, so when they're out and over at other people's house, they'll make good choices when they're on their own as well later on in life. So that's how I would approach it anyway. JC94, thank you for the super chat. Hi, doctor. Will strict carnivore fix my carpal tunnel? Ooh, it can definitely reduce inflammation and improve neurological functioning, and reduce the inflammation in our neurological systems, including our peripheral nerves. So people do improve from a symptom point of view in carpal tunnel and other sort of impingement features, such as radiculopathy, like if you had a compressed exiting nerve root from the spine, for example, from the spinal cord. But it depends on the level of impingement, and it depends on how much is able to be reversed. So you have a certain level of inflammation and swelling in that area, thickening of the different tissues in that area, and that's causing compression on the nerve. How much of that can be reversed? How bad is it? So some of that, let's say some of that reverses. Is that enough to give you significant improvement? It probably will improve somewhat. Is that enough to make it so you don't want surgery? That's something that we'll have to sort of wait and see. Carpal tunnel surgery is piss easy. I mean, it's just one of the more basic surgical procedures that exists. I mean, there's almost every surgical specialty does this. General surgeons can do it. Orthopedic surgeons can do it. Neurosurgeons do it. Like there's all sorts of, I mean, it's very, very straightforward. I mean, it's just a little incision right here. You just sort of dissect up and cut off, that sort of the thick ligament that's trapped over there. You just make sure you get all of it, and make sure the nerve's free and clear. Don't cut anything that's not supposed to be cut. Stitch it up and you're done. It's it takes minutes, and yes, you have a wound there and you need to sort of recover from that, but it's a pretty straightforward recovery, especially when you're carnivore. But it could very well be that you can avoid all that in the first place, and improve your certainly will improve your inflammation and neurological function in a number of other ways. Could very well improve this to enough to the point that you don't need or want surgery, and that would be great. But there's no guarantees, unfortunately, because we don't know how much inflammation and impingement that you have, and how much is possible for your body to reverse. So that's just a sort of a wait and see sort of thing. Annabella, the happy carnivore, thank you for the super chat again. Happy New Year, Dr. Anthony. I love you. You're amazing. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's very sweet of you. And it's nice to see you again. It's nice to see a lot of the old faces and names. I haven't done a live in quite some time, so it's nice to see everyone and some new faces as well, because we're doing this at sort of a different time, so we were able to get different people from different parts of the world. Matt Hutton, thank you very much for the super chat. Matt says that he has all the symptoms of hypothyroidism, low T and low in some minerals and vitamins. Had 3 thyroid tests monthly. TSH is 2.4, 2.2, 1.8, and then 4.3, and plus patient 2. I don't know what that is. Oh, part 2. Okay, let's see if we can find part 2. Might be a bit of a pain in the ass. Where is that? Where's part 2? Oh, it's actually another super chat. Okay, so here we go. And Matt says part 2. Test the day prescribed came back 1.7. Now confused. Free T3 and 4 generally okay. Free T3 was low once. Reverse T3 is high. Been carnivore for 4 months. Any ideas? And there's a part 3. Let's see if I can put all these together in my head. Got low levels of TPO antibodies, which is the Hashimoto's antibodies, just under normal. So that's the thing. These reference ranges for the antibodies are a bit weird, because they're saying below this amount of antibodies is normal. Well, if you have antibodies towards, for an autoimmune condition, then you have that autoimmune condition by definition. That's how you diagnose these things, and it just means that you're not in a flare up. And so, which, if you've been carnivore for 3 months, that can help bring those levels down. But if you have antibodies, then you have that condition, right? So even though it's under the normal level, I would say that you do have Hashimoto's disease, right? He goes on to say that with no improvements and not sure whether to keep taking levothyroxine or wait it out a bit. Well, as long as first of all, I can't give out, any specific medical advice, because you're not my patient, but you can't give that over the internet. But just generally speaking, you need to work with your doctor to try to get you on the right levels of thyroid hormone to get your TSH. Really under 2 is ideal. It's the reference range goes from like 0.5 to 4.5 is a pretty normal reference range for TSH. But anything TSH above 2.0 actually doubles your risk for developing thyroid cancer. So that's obviously not a good reference range. So above 2 is not acceptable in my mind. So you need that below 2. Really below 1.5 is ideal, but below 2 anyway. And so you seem to be there. That's great. But then you also need to look at your T4 and your T3. You can have perfectly normal and even optimal levels of T4, and you may have pretty substandard T3 if you're not converting T4 into T3. T4 converts into T3. T3 does the work. And so being low on zinc, for example, can mean that you won't convert T4 into T3. There are other reasons as well, but zinc is a major one. And so, you make sure that you have enough zinc. Beef is an excellent source of zinc. The best source of zinc are oysters, and second best is beef. And so, the meat products that you're eating, should help with your zinc, but that can take time to come up as well. So, if you have optimal levels of T4 and optimal levels of TSH, but you're not converting into T3, you can still feel pretty crummy. So think about that. And also your reverse T3 basically counteracts your free T3 and makes it so it doesn't work properly, right? So it slows it down. So you look at that ratio between those two, and if your reverse T3 is high, you can actually lower your thyroid function. So that's important to understand as well. I would definitely keep it up, and I would get onto your doctor about getting you on the proper dose of either levothyroxine, which is T4, or if it's not getting into T3 properly, even taking like a slow release T3 or desiccated pig thyroid is it's called different things in different countries, but it's a prescription, and that can give you all the T's: T0, T1, T2, T3, and T4. So it gives you all those T's. Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. So, that's important to to look at as well. It may be that you need something besides just T4. That's what's commonly prescribed for people, and some doctors will be like, no, that's the only thing you need, but it's not really. There's some people that don't convert properly, so that's the other thing you need to think about. And you need to get someone who understands about reverse T3, because you might need to get up to a slightly higher level with your T3 in order to offset that reverse T3. And and that's just one of the ways your body actually slows down your metabolism if you're doing long-term fast or you're in a famine or something like that. One of the things that happens is your reverse T3 goes up to dampen the effects of your T3. That's the idea anyway. And so if that's elevated, it may take some time before that can come down. Eating enough, showing your body that you're not in a famine, you don't need to slow down your metabolism, encouraging your metabolism to go up instead of down. And it may be that you need just more medication support, more thyroid support in the meantime until that sorts itself out. So, some things to look at anyway. Okay, I've also killed the the super chats just because I think we've been, I don't know how long we've been going actually. We've been going for like an hour or so, and I've still got a number of super chats left. So I'm gonna go through the rest of these, and then we'll call it a night. So I've put a pause on the super chats for the meantime anyway, because I don't want to not get to everyone's question. Amaran Vandermeer, thank you very much for the super chats. Very kind of you. Hi, doctor. Hypothyroid, adrenal issues, carnivore for 1.5 years now. Still doesn't work. Dr. Bright doesn't get why I don't get better on NDT, but still not improving. Can't sleep because of hunger. Interesting. Also reactive hypo. So I'm assuming hypoglycemia. What to do? Well, first of all, eat more. If your body's telling you to eat and you're so hungry that you're staying up, then it's keeping you up at night. I would eat more fatty meat. Unfortunately there are other things than just the food that we're eating or not eating that can affect our thyroid and our adrenals. But this accounts for a lot of them. So there could be other outside exposures and other sorts of things that are, endocrine disruptors, and, the phthalates and all these other sorts of scents and perfumes and thises and that's and shampoos and plastics and all these other sorts of things that can screw with these things. Or it could be something else completely, entirely unrelated, and that you won't be able to manipulate by changing your environment, unfortunately. And probably about 90% of things that we treat now as doctors, these non-communicable chronic diseases, things that absolutely are preventable. But that also means that 10% of things are things that don't fall into that category. So it could very well be that you have something in that 10% that is going to have an outside cause from your diet, lifestyle, and environmental exposures. So, it may be that there's something in your environment that's causing a problem. From a diet perspective, just going a strict line diet as possible. Making sure you have all the requisite vitamins and minerals, B12, folate, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, iodine, these sorts of things, and taking the medications that you need to support, to replace and augment your own body's ability to make thyroid hormone and hormones from your adrenals, etc. That's very important. I mean, these are very important hormones that you need. You can feel pretty rotten as a result of not having them in normal levels, and that's something that an endocrinologist or even a functional medicine practitioner should be able to help with, hopefully. And so I would definitely do that. I would definitely pursue that. And then you make your diet and lifestyle and environment as healthy as possible, and see if that helps. And if it does, then you can come off these supplements and medications, wonderful. And if not, at least you have the medications there to help you. And that really is the purpose of medicine, is to help fix the things that you can't fix on your own. And so you do everything that you can in as best you can, and then you fill in the gaps with medicine. That's my entire philosophy with medicine now. I look for diet and lifestyle interventions first and foremost, and I fill in the gaps with medications. And maybe I'll do that. Someone is hypothyroid, and they really are symptomatic. I'll put them on thyroid medications short term, fix their diet and lifestyle, and then eventually be able to take them off of that. But it helps them in the meantime while their body is recovering. And that's very helpful because people can feel pretty lousy and be quite sick and have other sorts of problems as a result of not having adequate levels of these different hormones in their body. So that's important as well. So hopefully that that can help. I mean, do work with a doctor, make sure you're getting on the right doses of these things as well. Try to get into these optimal ranges as opposed to just the normal ranges. You want to get into, you don't want to just barely crest the lower limit of the normal lab ranges, because those are typically low anyway. And so if you're just on the borderline, if you're, I mean, you're saying that, these lab ranges say like T3 of 3 is perfect, and 3 to 5.5 is perfect, and so 3 is great and 2.9 is a catastrophe. Like, oh, they're basically the same, aren't they? So if we're calling 2.9 bad, we should probably be thinking about 3 as bad too. So you want to be more into the middle of that range. Above 4 is where I'd like to see people, as T3. And so working with someone like Dr. Bright or someone else who understands more optimal reference ranges and can get you there, and then working on the diet and lifestyle side of things to hopefully, reverse any sort of environmental issues that could be from your diet or something else that could be triggering these things and letting your body heal. But, at the end of the day, even if this was something that was caused by your diet or something else, there is such a thing as damage done. And if there was something that was sort of permanently damaged and curtailed the functioning of your endocrine organs, such as your thyroid or your adrenals, it may be that they can't recover enough, unfortunately. So that's just, again, something that only time will tell. So hopefully that works. I'd just be as strict as possible. Get your vitamins, minerals, and everything else just teed up and give your body the best chance it has to recover. And good luck with that. Okay, so next question comes from Justice Makes Capitalism Possible. Thank you for the super chat. To get more iodine, should egg yolks be soft? I don't actually know that iodine gets denatured from cooking. I don't think that it does. Maybe someone in the comments section knows one way or the other, but I've never heard that iodine gets denatured by cooking it. So I don't think that it is something you have to worry about from that standpoint. So again, if it's you could certainly get iodine in egg yolks. Depends on what the chicken's eating. Depends on the soil that the chicken is being raised on. Depends on the soil that the food of the chicken is coming from. If that's feed or if that's worms and bugs, it still matters what goes on in the soil. So, yeah. So, but I don't think cooking it is a concern for that. Not that I know of, anyway. Just cook them the way you like them, I think. Eunice Booknaus, thank you very much for the super chat. Eunice says, hi, Dr. Chaffee, is 4 times more mitochondria really realistic? It is, actually. Yeah. So there was a study I came across years ago when I was first sort of looking into all this that showed that after about 3 to 4 months on a strict ketogenic diet, because of autophagy, mitophagy, the cell turnover and the mitochondrial turnover, and then mitogenesis, making more of these mitochondria, that after 3-4 months, you have 4 times the number of mitochondria in your cells, and they're 4 times as effective and efficient because they're newer, faster, better versions, right? So yes, that's very realistic. And in fact, after that, your body keeps improving your mitochondrial function and number. And so even up for up to 2.5, 3 years, you're still steadily increasing the number of mitochondria and their functionality. So yeah, that's very realistic. Dave Clark, thank you very much for the super chat. Dave says, my wife was just diagnosed with spinal stenosis and bone spurs. I'm very sorry to hear that. Her arms go numb and hurt at night when she sleeps. I tell her no more carbs or sugar, and a line diet might work. Thoughts on this? Well, it can certainly help. I've seen quite a lot of people with similar issues with even like canal stenosis, and certainly foraminal stenosis and impingement on the exiting nerve roots, but even with very similar sorts of conditions. Improve from a symptom point of view, certainly. It's probably not going to get rid of your bone spurs. I don't think that it will. I do know people that have had improvements in bone spurs. I don't really know exactly what the hell is going on with bone spurs and why they're growing and sort of calcifying in little blebs on the surface of your bones. But some people do improve those things. It's something you just have to sort of look on an individual basis to see if that helps. But for everybody, it will reduce inflammation. Ketones, beta hydroxybutyrate directly blocks something called the NLRP3 inflammasome, which causes inflammation, as the name would suggest. And so inflammation levels come down. You're also excluding a lot of different plants and harmful nonsense like sugar and carbs, which increase inflammation in the first place. Increased inflammation will have increased pain and neurological dysfunction. And so you're reducing the amount of inflammation coming into your body, and you're directly reducing the amount of inflammation that is left by having high levels of beta hydroxybutyrate. So those are all good things, and those can all improve neurological functioning, and ketones just in general improve neurological function. And so I see a lot of people with radiculopathy, their upper limbs, lower limbs, either way, that improve from a symptom point of view. They don't have this shooting pain and numbness and so on. And so that's very beneficial, even though it hasn't reversed the underlying pathology. It has made the damage that underlying pathology is causing and the pain and symptoms that it's triggering to lessen, which is really good. I mean, because that's the whole point. It doesn't matter what your scan looks like if you don't have any symptoms, right? So if we have someone that has like just a horrible scan, we're seeing all this stenosis, we're like, oh, geez, those nerves all look impinged. When we do an exam, we look at somebody and they had to have absolutely no symptoms, you're not going to operate on that person, right? Because, first do no harm. Surgery causes harm. You're cutting through tissue, right? You're damaging and destroying things. And sometimes it's necessary to do that to free up a nerve or something like that. But if your patient is not symptomatic, then you're only causing harm. You're not actually going to provide any benefit by freeing that nerve up because it's not causing a problem. The nerve is still functioning, right? So yes, it can definitely help. One thing to remember with sugar and carbs is that they cause glycation. So all carbohydrates, and sugars are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are sugars. I mean, if you take organic chemistry, that's what they're called. Those terms are interchangeable, right? So people, carbohydrates aren't the same as sugar. Jesus Christ, it's literally a synonym, right? So we call sugar just table sugar, but those are carbohydrates, right? Glucose, fructose, disaccharide, they're bonded glucose and fructose, right? So these are sugars. Carbohydrates are sugars. Sugars are carbohydrates. It's the same word. It means the same thing. And so carbohydrates, all carbohydrates. So all sugars, all carbohydrates, all cause glycation. They all will physically fuse as non-enzymatic binding between the carbohydrate molecules and other molecules, and cause very serious damage and permanent damage. It's called glycation. And so you get a buildup of these so-called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. They literally age you, right? And they age your tissue. And so there are plenty of studies. I found any number of studies on, when you're cleaning out a joint, cleaning out all this damaged, gross cartilage and arthritis out of a joint, they've looked at it and they found that they're just replete with AGEs, these advanced glycation end products. So it's damage from sugar, carbohydrates, right? And so this has also been found in the discs in the spine as well, causing degenerative discs. So when you have degenerative discs and degenerative spinal conditions, and you test those things, you take it to the lab, you'll find that they're full of advanced glycation end products, these AGEs, this damage from sugar and carbohydrates. So in the short term, for her position right now, yes, it can definitely help her from a symptom point of view. Long term, it will help reduce and maybe even prevent this damage from progressing, which is very important. So it's going to stop this problem from getting worse, hopefully. So there's a lot of benefits by doing this. Even just eating more protein, that's been shown plenty of times in studies to improve your outcomes with surgery. So if she does have to go down the surgical route down the road, she's going to have much less inflammation. She's going to have much better wound healing, and she's going to have a higher protein diet. She's going to recover better, and she's going to have lower risk of postoperative infection and better wound healing and things like that. And better wound healing corresponds with lower risk of postoperative infection and things like that. So I think there's a lot of benefit to doing this. I think you're definitely right on the right track here, and hopefully that helps her enough that she can avoid surgery. But it will definitely help her and can help prevent this issue from getting worse and affecting other areas of her spine and nervous system. So good luck to her. Mike Garcia, thank you for the super chat. Mike says, if LDL is okay, but may cause plaque if vessels are damaged by glucose as it tries to repair it, could a cerebral flow diverter aneurysm and high LDL cause plaque? Carnivore okay if flow diverter fit it? I don't actually think that LDL is part of this process at all, really. I don't think that I don't think that you need damage, right? But you damage your vessels with glucose. You can damage it with homocysteine. You can damage it with nicotine. It's sort of weird. I think the tobacco companies are up to their old tricks again. Putting out all this research about how great nicotine is for you. Nicotine sucks. Nicotine is a drug. Nicotine causes direct damage to your body and your brain and your vasculature. It causes it actually can damage the arterial lining of your vessels, and that starts the process for atherosclerosis, right, and peripheral vascular disease and these sorts of things, right? So, not what you want. But it's more than just glucose. So, the question is, if LDL is okay, but may cause plaque if the vessels are damaged. I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think there's any evidence to show that. In fact, there is no evidence to show that. Higher levels of LDL do not correspond with higher levels of cardiovascular disease. And the correlation is not causation in any case. But the only randomized controlled trials that we have on the subject, and people say, oh, well, that's not a good step. They're the only ones we have. So you don't like it, do a better one, right? But they're the only ones we have. And the only ones we have show that in randomized controlled trials with thousands of patients, that when you reduce LDL and replace saturated fat with polyunsaturated vegetable oils and seed oils, that more people die of heart attacks and strokes as a result. So this is just not something that we can actually even suggest that cholesterol is part of this. In fact, there are studies looking at seed oils that have plant oils, plant fats have sterols, which are the plant's version of cholesterol. We don't need the plant versions of things. We need the animal versions of things. And the plant versions of cholesterol will lower our cholesterol because it it sends a signal to our liver that we're getting cholesterol in from our food, and so we don't need to make as much. Fine. But it's not actually cholesterol. We don't actually use it cholesterol. We can't use it properly as a building material and structural component. We can't use it to make our hormones or vitamin D, etc., which is what all our hormones, vitamin D, are made of, is cholesterol. And so it actually screws things up a lot. And also, macrophages really like cholesterol. They hang on to it tightly. All cells make cholesterol. And so they really like human cholesterol. They don't like plant sterols. And so they actually spit those out very readily. And so they've actually found in like AAA, on histology on AAAs, which was in abdominal aortic aneurysm, that they actually found this stuff stuffed in all these plant sterols. And we also know that like trans fats, these things are very atherogenic, right? So these cause a lot of these plaques. These are fats that just our bodies just have no idea what to do with, because trans fats don't exist in nature, right? So that's something our bodies have never seen before. Our bodies don't know what the hell to do with it. And they end up getting stuffed into weird places that shouldn't really be there and cause problems like cardiovascular disease. And so that's what's happening. I don't think for a cold frozen second that our own cholesterol is doing that. LDL is just a carrier molecule. It carries cholesterol, it carries lipids, and it carries proteins. So does HDL. HDL just carries slightly less cholesterol. Very similar molecules. So just having more LDL molecules, why would that cause a problem? When you fast and you just stop eating for 5 days, your LDL will go up, right? Because you're running on your fat stores. It's a metabolic state change. You're running on your fat stores, and so you need to transport that fat, lipids and cholesterol, proteins, etc. You need to transport that around the body. So you need more of these things. As part of fat adaptation is getting more LDL, more HDL, right? Is because you need to transport this around the body. You start eating carbohydrates, that goes right down. You start exercising, it goes up, right? Because you need more energy. You're trying to mobilize things, right? So fasting regular periods of time, that's been shown to improve health in a number of different ways, right? Including heart disease risk and things like that. And so, but it raises your LDL. If LDL directly causes harm, what's going on, right? So again, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the smell test. It was made up in the first place. It wasn't a group of serious scientists who are like, ooh, we really think this is what's going on. It was the sugar companies in the first place, and probably the tobacco companies along with them, pushing this narrative and making up this story and paying off people like Ansel Keys and professors from Harvard and elsewhere to just bullshit and lie and make up studies and things like that. Ansel Keys was, did the 7 Nations study. That was a garbage study. He completely falsified all sorts of different data. He had R value for his 7 nations. There were 22 nations he had complete data on. He just completely omitted those. And so he just picked the ones that fit that graph that said, ooh, more cholesterol, more heart disease. The interesting thing there, if you just looked at sugar consumption as well, it had the exact same curve for those exact same countries. So it was called an R value. So your relative risk association for cholesterol was exactly the same as relative risk association with sugar consumption. And guess what Ansel Keys' take home was from that study and the rest of his work was, ooh, cholesterol could really be a problem. Eat sugar instead. What kind of asshole do you have to be to make that sort of statement? So this guy was a fraud. And I think that his entire life's work should be burned to the ground. I mean, the guy, you just can't trust a single word of it. Other people think that, he was just ideologically driven and really wanted the best, but just couldn't accept that this went against his life work. That happens too, but I think that it's more likely, in my mind, just being the cynical sort of person and that I am, that he was just a fraud through and through, because he was just paid from day one to just push this narrative, and he had the data in front of him. I mean, he had the R value for sugar was exactly the same as the R value for cholesterol. And yet he recommended you just cut out fat and replace that with sugar, because sugar is an empty calorie. You need these calories from somewhere, so just replace them with sugar. And he was being paid by the sugar companies. So I don't think that he was being honest by any stretch of the imagination. And then he actually worked on one of these large scale randomized controlled trials called the Minnesota Coronary Experiment. Went on for 5 years. They looked at nearly 10,000 people that were institutionalized in psychiatric facilities or the prison systems, prison and jail systems, and they didn't even know it was a double-blinded study. So they just replaced like butter with margarine and animal fats with seed oils, and no one knew which group was which. And the group that had plant oils and margarines replaced for animal fats did indeed reduce their cholesterol because of the plant sterols, and more of them died of heart attacks and strokes as a result. So what are we trying to accomplish here? And as a result, Ansel Keys refused to publish the study and buried it. So I mean, this is malice aforethought. This guy knows what he's doing. So it's never been proven one way or the other that LDL is even associated with cardiovascular disease. Certainly has not been shown with randomized controlled trials. And so I just don't think we play into their game. I don't. Well, we assume. No, we don't assume a thing. Make them prove it. They have not proven it. It's been disproven a number of times. So I don't accept that position at all. And so, I don't think that we need to even entertain this whole what if scenario, because it's not likely to be the case. So carnivore diet is okay no matter what you do with so all of that scenario, LDL and this and that and all that. Carnivore is good. Carnivore is what your body's designed for. Your optimal nutrition for carnivore diet for a lion is good under any and all circumstances. The grasses that cows and horses eat are optimal under any and all circumstances. So just the optimal nutrition for a species is always optimal for that species, always, right? And so I wouldn't worry about this sort of thing. And I don't worry about that sort of thing. You can watch my videos on the truth about cholesterol and heart disease. You can watch Dr. Paul Mason's video. He has multiple videos and lectures at medical conferences on cholesterol, saturated fat, and all these other sorts of things. There's books written on the subject. One's from Dr. Malcolm Kendrick called The Clot Thickens, goes through all this sort of stuff and talks about his idea about what really causing it, and so on and so on and so on. So I just do not accept the premise that LDL has anything to do with cardiovascular disease if in any way, shape, or form, apart from being protective against it. And prove me wrong. But right now, the evidence shows is entirely against that theory. Daniela Tarantello, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. It's very kind of you. Thank you, Dr. Chaffee. Love your passions and contributions. I'm super inspired and grateful you're here in Australia. Started my carnivore journey 1 week ago. Well, that's fantastic. That's really great to hear that, Daniela. Thank you very much for sharing that. And good luck with that. The first couple of weeks are a bit of a transition period. Some people feel really good. I just felt great right away on it. But after 2 weeks, I really just the improvements I saw in my health and my athletic performance just went through the roof. I just couldn't believe how good I felt. I felt better than I had in my whole life, except for that 5-year period in my early 20s when I was inadvertently doing a carnivore diet because I just refused to eat any and all plants because my professor of cancer biology told us how toxic they were and how carcinogenic they were. When you have a professor of cancer biology tell you that he doesn't eat any sort of plants, vegetables, or fruits, grains, because of how carcinogenic they are, that sticks with you. At least it stuck with me anyway. So, now I'm doing this and I just feel amazing. So, Hopefully you do as well. And in the coming weeks, I'm sure you'll feel better than you have in a very long time. So good luck with that. And yeah, thank you very much for thinking about it and being open-minded enough to give something new a try. Ground Rush Labs, thank you very much for the super chat. Question, Doc, does Lion Diet help with high blood pressure and Raynaud's? So actually, if you roll back, one of the first questions I answered was actually about high blood pressure. The short answer is yes, it can definitely help with a lot of causes of high blood pressure. There are other causes, but many of them are high insulin, high homocysteine, and sometimes salt, but not always. It's but I have seen that. Even when people have corrected everything else, salt can still be an issue. So just be aware. Most people are not salt sensitive. Some people are, so you need to keep that in mind as well. So getting your insulin down, getting your homocysteine down by getting your B12 up, etc. That can all help blood pressure over time. You need to be very careful because if your blood pressure goes too low, you can start getting dizzy and lightheaded, and that's a risk for falls. And so you need to be able to work with your doctor to reduce your dose as needed, especially if you're standing up and you're sort of getting lightheaded often. Check your blood pressure. It's probably because you're on too much medication at that point. But do go back to the beginning of this video. I go into a lot more detail about that, but that's the gist of it anyway. Annabelle, the Happy Carnivore, says, I lose weight every time I eat fat trimmings. That's really good. A lot of people find that as well. When you're eating properly, it stimulates your metabolism and stimulates your body to just actually use its resources properly. And people, lose quite a lot of weight. And some people actually get through stalls by increasing the amount of fat that they're eating, which seems counterintuitive. But I mean, there's even books on this. There was a book in the 1950s from a doctor. It was called Eat Fat to Get Thin. And it was all about this, saying actually you need to eat these things. You need to eat your proper diet, and by doing that, you'll actually stimulate fat loss. So glad to hear that you're finding those same results. Raul D, thank you for the super chat. Raul says, how do you avoid under eating on a carnivore diet? By eating enough. Pretty simple answer, but really you just have to make sure that you're eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Your hunger signals are going to be very, very different. That's why it's easy to undereat on a carnivore diet, because normally we're trying to limit what we're eating. We're trying to eat just enough to take the edge off so we don't have to keep eating, because if you just keep eating as much as your body's telling you to, well, then you're going to get fat. Well, that doesn't make sense, because that doesn't happen to any other animal in nature. Koalas sit in trees made out of their food. They have no natural predators. They're not hiding and scurrying and then just desperately trying to get enough food. They have nothing but abundance in their food supply typically. And you don't see differences in these animals. You don't see like koalas that have a more abundant supply of food that get all fat and bloated because they just don't know how to stop eating, and others that are all skinny and straggling because they're just desperate for resources. Now, you can get the latter. The former doesn't really exist. Fat, overweight. You don't see some fat, bloated koala. It's just like, oh, that's Dave. He's just got no self-control. No, they all look. You tell me. You try to tell me the difference between two koalas you see in nature. It's not going to happen. Like, they look identical, right? So it's it is the case that you should be able to self-regulate. Animals in the wild do. We don't see different things, obese and skinny and this is and that's all across nature. You just don't see that. And people say, oh, well, everything's scarce in nature. That's a bloody cop-out. That's an excuse and a dumb one. That's something that I was told as a kid too, and it doesn't even pass the smell test. I mean, just think of koalas. I mean, just starts and stops there. They don't have a scarcity in their resources typically, and when they don't have scarcity, they don't get fat and bloated. So that's just a non-starter there. But because we're eating garbage food and carbohydrates that raise insulin, that blocks leptin, that causes reactive hypoglycemia, and when it says, oh, we need to eat. You have all these very clever food scientists that have spent the last 40 years making food as addictive and compulsive as possible. you need to stop yourself and say like, oh no, I'm gonna stop. Even though I want to keep going, my body's telling me to keep going, I need to stop, because your body's getting screwed up mixed signals, right? So if you cut all those things out and you're just eating carnivore diet, you don't get those screwed up mixed signals anymore. You're just getting real signals. So your body's saying, yeah, you could do that. And you're saying, oh, no, I got to stop. So you're stopping way too early. You need to keep going until fatty meat stops tasting good. Your hunger signals are going to be very different. You have to relearn these things. But a good fail safe for the vast majority of people, unless you're on medications like corticosteroids, like prednisone, prednisolone, hydrocortisone, things like that, that will screw up your hunger signals. Barring that, if you're eating just fatty meat and water, it has to be fatty, because lean meat starts tasting bland pretty quickly. So you need the fat. It's very important. But as long as you're just eating that, you listen to your taste buds. If fatty meat tastes good, you're hungry, keep eating. Each bite will taste slightly less good until finally it doesn't taste good at all. That's because you have receptors in your stomach that track up the vagus nerve to your brain and tell your brain how many nutrients are in your stomach, because your body tracks nutrients. It does not track calories. And so if you're getting enough nutrients and nutrition, your brain says, hey, we have enough of this. We don't need any more of that. And so your taste response dampens down. So you can have a big steak, and the first bite, it just tastes the best thing you've ever eaten in your entire life. And after a while, it just tastes a bit bland, like cardboard. Well, why is that? It's the same steak cooked at the same time in the same conditions. It's still warm. And yet first bite tasted fantastic. And there was a gradient sort of slowly getting less amazing until finally it just doesn't taste good at all. Why is that? That's because your brain controls what experience you get on the tongue, right? And because it's trying to tell you something, right? If something is bitter and is awful, your brain is telling you, don't eat that. There's something harmful in there. There's something bad in there. Don't eat it, right? And it could taste good, because these food scientists have designed things to taste good. Sugar is a drug and it's addictive. We say like, oh, this is something safe and gives me energy, but we've refined that and put that in garbage, and that's obviously not the same thing. And and while we may have found fruit every now and then, it would have been seasonal and local, and then we would have had to face winter, and we're going to have scarcity throughout the winter, right? So putting on a bit of weight in the summer and putting on a bit of extra fat to get into the winter, probably not a bad idea. But you're eating that every day, all day, not a good idea. So you eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good, and that's how you make sure you don't undereat. It's the same thing if you're losing weight, gaining weight, putting on muscle, doing whatever, dealing with autoimmunity. It's always the same thing. You apply the same principles, and your body will tell you how much to eat. You eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Try to get 1 to 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein. You eat as many times during the day as your body's telling you to eat, and that's it. But you at least try to eat once a day. If you're trying to put on weight, you try to eat at least twice a day, and that's pretty much it, and you'll do fine. But just make sure that you keep eating until you get that bite that sort of just tastes like cardboard and stops being interesting, and you'll do fine. And good luck with that. So this is the last question. It's from Johnny. Thank you very much, Johnny, for the super chat. Johnny says, I'm having some electrolyte issues on red meat only. Do you know what the best form of magnesium or potassium to take with a carnivore diet are? I do the diet for autoimmune issues, so I don't want a flare-up. That's interesting. You talk about potassium. Have you had your potassium checked? That's that'd be interesting. I've done thousands of pieces of blood work and things like that. I have yet to see anybody who has ever actually dropped their potassium. I've never seen that. But there's always room for something new. But I've just never seen that. So I'd be interested. Is that something that you actually tested on a blood test? You actually have hypokalemias. You actually have low potassium. If so, there's a lot of different kinds of potassium and things that we would use in the hospital, things like slow K. You can even just get things called low salt, which is a mixture of sort of a 50-50 mixture of sodium chloride and potassium chloride. And it sort of tastes a bit weird. It's a sort of different tasting saltiness, but it's fine. And that's a way to get it as well. Magnesium, there are a number of different kinds of magnesium. They seem to be better for different sorts of things. For ones that helps with sleep, and then cramps, and then this and then that. Some of the best magnesium supplements are the ones that have a mixture of a lot of those, and so they all come together. You want to get ones that have high bioavailability as well. The inactive ingredients can also matter as much as the active ingredients to do with absorption, etc. I don't have sort of like a list of all these sorts of things on exactly what to look out for, but these are the principles that you need to watch out for. There are, like in Australia, they have like prescription grade supplements, which I think is bizarre, but what that does for you is at least is what it is that it at least goes under better regulations and controls, and so it gets checked and saying, it says that it has this amount of these things, it has those amount of those things, because they're checked and regulated, whereas most over-the-counter supplements just don't have that check. They might have some independent labs that sort of check these things, and quite often those independent labs show they're like, yeah, this doesn't have exactly what it's saying it does, or maybe it doesn't have anything at all to do with what it says it does. So those sorts of things, like the supplement industry, is really not regulated, and so you need to take that with a grain of salt, and be careful with that as well. Someone in the comments mentioned that potassium citrate is sort of the best form, and that's sort of what shows up in food. Great. I really have just never seen anybody that needed to take potassium, but if you do and you're showing that low on your blood test, sure, take what you need. But there are also other, there's what are they? The different brands. There's different sorts of brands that do it. If you are going to take these supplement brands, though, just make sure that you're not the ones that have the artificial sweeteners, or the artificial flavorings, or even the natural flavorings. Just no flavorings, no sweeteners, because they're awful. They're not good for you. You don't want them, and they're not what you want in your body. So they, whether or not they have calories, it doesn't matter. They have chemicals. They are chemicals, and you're a chemical factory. You're not a combustion engine. You're not a steam locomotive. You're not burning things for heat energy to boil a tank of water and create steam energy, right? You have chemicals, and you have chemical reactions with those chemicals. So, things like stevia and monk fruit sugar, but it's natural. Yeah, so is arsenic, and so are all the plants that we're trying to avoid, because they have all these natural toxins that we don't want. Most natural things on earth will kill you. Okay. So natural is not great, just because it's natural. Our natural diet, that's a very different thing entirely, right? It exists in nature. Lions exist in nature. They're not good for you, typically. But what your natural diet is, meaning what you're biologically predisposed to benefit the most from, that's a very different story. So I don't think that you're going to get a flare up by taking those supplements, as long as you don't have any artificial ingredients or sugars and sweeteners and anything else besides the actual electrolytes that you want. So just be very careful with that. But those flavorings and sweeteners can definitely trip up your autoimmune conditions. So just be very careful with that. So just take exactly what you need. Don't do anything else. Hopefully you'll be able to get what you need from meat, trying organs and things like that. Liver is one of the best supplements on earth. It's nature's multivitamin, and it's going to have all the things, all these different sorts of things that you will do very well with in the correct, most bioavailable forms. So that's something to think about as well. Kind of creepy. Blood has a lot of really good electrolytes in the right forms. You can get these from a butcher. I've gotten blood from a butcher and just sort of drink the plasma. If you get it fresh enough before it clots, you can just drink it down. If it does clot, different story. And then there's just like the plasma that separates off, and you can drink that. But plenty of electrolytes, plenty of nutrients as well. So good luck with that. Hopefully a bit of organs can help with that. If you need some magnesium and some potassium, go for it. Take it. I've really not seen anybody have to take potassium on a carnivore diet. Typically, no one does. And your body has to really perfectly regulate potassium or you die. And so it's hopefully something that you're not in a position that you actually do need to supplement that, because that probably means something else is going on. You might need to take a look at that's outside of the carnivore diet. But either way, good luck with that. Hopefully that was helpful. The brand that I was talking about that's like prescription strength is called, I think it's called Metagenics, and they're more regulated, and so you can sort of trust more what's in them, and hopefully, hopefully that does what you need. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate that. That's the end of the super chats. We've been going for about 2 hours, which I actually wasn't really planning on going that long, but that's not a bad length of time and not a bad place to stop. So we have a couple of super stickers here. It's very kind of you for doing that. Anna Pavlova, thank you so much for that. She gave 2 super stickers, which was very, very kind to do. And Lisa M did as well. So thank you very much to Anna and Lisa for that. And thank you all for the questions. Those were all excellent. I really enjoyed that. Looks like there was quite a stimulating conversation in the chats and all the different sort of platforms. And I hope that everybody enjoyed that and enjoyed the live. So thank you all very much. It was great to see you all. I'm going to try to do these regularly again, at least once a week. I'm going to try to find a morning on my time in order to do these. But if we can do these things in the evening as well, we seem to get a bit of the East Coast in America, and the European crowd and the Australian crowd seem to be okay here too. And I'll try to do a more US friendly time as well if I can swing it. But mornings are difficult for me because I work every day, so that's a bit difficult because mornings are sort of have to just get to work. So, but thank you all very much. I will try to do these a bit more often, and hope to see you all there. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.